What's going on YouTube? It's Deej, back again with another video, and today I am coming at you sadly with my last updated 3-round mock draft before we get to see the real thing. So it's a bit exciting, but it's also a bit sad to see this part of the draft season come to a close. But I'm excited to bring this video your way, and hopefully you guys are excited to see it. Be sure to hit that like button if you do enjoy today's video. Subscribe if you're new, looking for more football coverage in your life, and of course, leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who could be this year's Cole Strange? Who goes too high? Who falls way too low this year? And of course, throughout this video, let me hear who your favorite team is, and do you like the picks I'm giving your favorite squad? So we're going through all 3 rounds today, so I'm going to be pretty quick on every pick. If you're new to the channel and want to see any more of my thoughts on these prospects, because I didn't give you enough meat on the bone here, definitely go back and check out some of our previous videos where I go a little bit more in depth with it. But 3 rounds, 6 trades to cover. Let's go ahead and get started with the number 1 overall pick. This is one I'll be very quick on, Bryce Young. I mean, the betting odds suggest as much, and this is what I've been saying I would do if I were the Carolina Panthers. So love that direction for Carolina. And then we get to number 2, and this could be something I haven't done in probably 4, 5, 6 months, probably since December, January time. But Will Levis, look, he's my quarterback too, so I'm kind of excited to see that he is the now betting favorite to go number 2. This could be defense. Maybe it's all smokescreen and CJ Stroud's still their guy, but him having the same agent as Deshaun Watson does feel like as much as this is a football business, it's also a people business, and that does feel like it could create some complications there on the people side of it. I think you draft a quarterback here at 2 because if you're going to draft one at 12, I mean, what does that say? If you had a higher priority in this draft, that feels a little weird. Go ahead and cement, hey, we're going to take a guy here at number 2. And I like to see what Will Levis could look like in this Shanahan disciple offense. I think that could be a good environment for him to step into play calling wise. Now we just got to boost up the talent around him. But I'm still going to get a defensive impact playmaker here for Houston, not too long away. But because CJ Stroud is still available, I think this opens up the door for Arizona to start fielding some pretty heavy trade calls, and I think one that they would get is from Tennessee. We'll give up pick 41 and then next year's second. Pretty much same trade value. It could be more because of the quarterback being involved, but hey, this is mockdraftdatabase.com. This is their trade engine. Don't be bad with me. I'm just working within the system. But I think if Stroud is there, Mike Vrabel likes his Ohio State guys. And as much as Ron Carthon is in his first year as a GM, I think the owner and Vrabel and even Carthon can see Jacksonville's positioned to be the best team in the division for the next, 10 years? Houston just took a quarterback at 2. Indianapolis is about to take a quarterback at 4. So what are they doing? So I think that could, push their sense of urgency up a little bit, especially if it's Stroud that's available, because that could give them a guy that allows them to reset the position, move on from Tannehill. Let's say they trade him to Atlanta or something like that to reunite with Arthur Smith. And then also get that future franchise guy and a guy who can help you win now, but also get a lot cheaper on the books and then spend that money elsewhere or have it roll over to next year. So I think if Stroud makes it to 3, Tennessee is going to be involved. And then that leaves Anthony Richardson going pick number 4. I know some of the 4 quarterback, in the first 4 picks, excitement has maybe dulled down over the last couple of weeks, but I still think it's plausible. I have all 4 of these quarterbacks in the top 8 on my big board, and I think all 4 should go in the top 10. I think the need and the demand for the position is going to kind of create a situation where we might get to see this on Thursday night. So, and this is actually kind of cool because this is actually my quarterback rankings in order: Bryce Young, Will Levis, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. So would like to see it from that standpoint as well. And then here we go. We get Seattle. I'm going to give them Will Anderson. Now, I've heard the rumors out there that Jalen Carter's their guy, and that could be true. But I think if Will Anderson's on the board, then they'll change their tune. I think they might be thinking that he's already, Will Anderson's already off the board, so therefore Jalen Carter might be the guy. If Will Anderson's there, you draft him here. He's the second best non-quarterback in this class, but, Jalen Carter comes with a lot more uncertainty off the field and some of those immaturity concerns that popped up this, offseason and draft cycle. And edge is the one position Seattle hasn't addressed, so let's go get him a guy who could become a perennial double-digit sack type of dude. And then speaking of Jalen Carter, he's not going to last on the board for too long. I just think he's too perfect of a fit there in Detroit. He's the exact 3-4 DN that they're looking to add. Big time run defense reinforcements. Keep Malcolm Rodriguez, keep Derek Barnes and company clean at the linebacker level, but also getting you one more pass rusher there in the mix on top of Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston. And that defensive line looks a whole lot scarier. Then for the Raiders, I'm going to give them Devin Witherspoon. I could see them going Gonzalez or Witherspoon, but maybe the immediacy that comes with Witherspoon, knowing that, hey, it's a pretty high floor and feel like he can make an impact right away. To me, he is the most NFL ready of all the corners. in a division where you see Mahomes and Herbert and hopefully a resurgent Russell Wilson and the Broncos. All that really to say, like the Raiders' pass defense for 6 games a year minimum is going to be pretty tested. Or maybe it's just 4. We'll see about Russ and the Broncos. But nevertheless, they're going to need that top flight corner, and it's just something that Patrick Graham and that side of the ball doesn't have right now. And speaking of Patrick Graham, he mixes it up with defense, and I think Devin Witherspoon could be up for that challenge. So pairing up 2 former Fighting Illini, Nate Hobbs and Devin Witherspoon, could create a fun tandem there in the back end. And then here, before we get to pick 8, I'm actually going to have a trade where Atlanta is going to move down, and like I said, I'm going to give Houston a cornerstone defensive piece for D'Amico Ryans to work with. It's going to be 8, 12, and then just throw in pick 73, their second, third rounder. Not terrible, and that allows Houston to draft Tyree Wilson, who I do think would be a fantastic fit. If you saw my best defensive fits video, it was in there for a reason. I think, especially in a 4-man, 4-3 base, 4-man front, you can move Tyree Wilson all across the defensive line. Probably starts out on the outside for base maybe and then kicks inside for passing situations. I would like that a ton. And he's a freaky athlete. He just needs to clean up his hand placement. And he's got a freaky build on top of the, what we assume what is there athletically, because we didn't get to see the official numbers there. But I do think he's at least a plus level athlete. But with that twitchy frame and 86-inch wingspan, I mean, that's one of one. There are not many guys built like that. So giving that type of guy to D'Amico Ryans, letting him work his magic, I think would be a big-time addition to a defensive line that desperately needs that type of help. All right, next up, Chicago at pick number 9. This has pretty much been the same selection for the last 4 or 5 mocks that I've done. Yeah, I'll go Paris Johnson Jr. here. He's the best offensive tackle, in my opinion, in this class. Good scheme fit. I feel more than comfortable with him flipping over to right tackle, kind of like what we saw with Penei Sewell and the Detroit Lions a couple of years ago. And yeah, once you have Paris there at right tackle, Tevin Jenkins plays guard, Cody Whitehair moves over to center, and all of a sudden, that offensive line goes from a real problem area in Chicago to a relative strength on the roster. Then we get to Philadelphia, and I'm going to go Lucas Van Ness. To me, it feels like a perfect Brandon Graham replacement. A guy who wins from speed to power, and especially with Graham and that bull rush being his calling card, I think it makes a ton of sense there. And he's a younger guy, so he can kind of step into a similar situation to what he had at Iowa, where, hey, like the older guys are going to get the start and maybe get more snaps than you on the edge, but we can rotate you in, and Philadelphia always has that rotation, always prioritizes depth. So I don't rule out that Van Ness could be someone they look to add to that rotation right now and then eventually have a starting spot in mind for LVN, who, again, redshirt sophomore, still a lot of potential to mine out of Van Ness, and he's an underrated athlete at that. Arizona, I'm going to go Christian Gonzalez. He slips just enough to give Jonathan Gannon, I think, a perfect corner for his defense. I think Gonzalez is scheme versatile, can play anything you need, just like Witherspoon. But to that end, press man, which, Jonathan Gannon runs a lot of cover one man, and then he plays a lot of quarters, which, off man coverage essentially for Gonzalez. I do think that's the exact coverage combo I want to see him playing a majority of his snaps. And so I think it's a perfect place for him to go. And after losing Byron Murphy and, Budda Baker trade impending, like, who's that identifying piece for the Arizona defense? I'm not sure there is one right now. Gonzalez definitely has the talent level to be that guy. And then for Atlanta, another team that traded back, I'm going to give him Nolan Smith. I've been hearing kind of the murmurs and, seeing some of the stuff that says that, hey, maybe the Falcons really do like Nolan Smith. That could be their guy. But I think it makes it even easier to look at Nolan Smith as a target if you move back these 4 spots, garner an extra 3rd-round pick. And you know why he's a little bit lighter in this whole draft cycle? I've been saying I want someone with a little bit more mass, a little bit more beef on the other side of Arnold Ebiketie. Nolan Smith stops the run at a high enough level to where I'm not as worried about it. Plus, I think he can bulk up, 5 to 10 pounds worth of muscle onto his body and still be this super explosive athlete that hopefully with a more advantageous alignment on the defensive line where he can go one-on-one with tackles, we'll start to see that pass rush production come pretty quickly there in Atlanta. All right, now we get something a little different. Obviously, the Aaron Rodgers trade has happened. That was a really interesting deal, and I honestly think both sides kind of get exactly what they're looking for. But with Green Bay moving up a couple spots, I'm still going to take Miles Murphy. Peter Skoronski was appealing there just for his position flexibility and trying to plug in where they might have holes long term. But I'll go with Miles Murphy, twitched up athlete, a guy who can stop the run right now and also win with power right now. You just need to develop that move set and that pass rush plan, and that's a lot of what we just saw the Green Bay do with Rashawn Gary. So I'd love to see them take another swing at a bat of this twitched up athlete and then have Miles Murphy hopefully step into that Preston Smith starting role, and then you could be looking at an insanely athletic and insanely big edge tandem of Rashawn Gary and Miles Murphy for years to come in Green Bay. Then for New England at 14, Could have gone offensive tackle here, and Skoronski, Broderick Jones still available. There are options. But I'm going to go Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't think I've had this pick throughout the entire draft cycle, to be honest with you, which is kind of mind-blowing. But I do think JSN is going to be the first wide receiver off the board. And in this situation, you just move Juju Smith-Schuster out wide, which typically I like him more as a slot wide receiver, but last year in Kansas City played almost 60% of his snaps out wide, so maybe Bill Belichick is looking to continue that trend, and then you plug in JSN, you give Mac Jones this high volume, number one target guy there from the inside, target over the middle of the field, and you can trust JSN to get open, great hands, and also at 6'1", 200 pounds, he's kind of a bull to bring down. He is a threat in the yak department as well. So I just think it gives New England an opportunity to get that number one wide receiver, that go-to guy in big spots. And I think considering JSN does feel like the one consensus first rounder the league has, that could ease their concerns about drafting another first round wide receiver. Then we get to the Jets. I'm going to go Peter Skoronski. This one was pretty easy. Whether it's long-term Lincoln Tomlinson replacement at guard, or he is going to start at tackle, depending on what happens with Becton and Dwayne Brown and Max Mitchell, whatever their plans are there. I love the versatility and the flexibility that Peter Skoronski gives the Jets here, while we know he is going to be one of their 5 best offensive linemen. They bring back Connor McGovern, so it's probably him starting at tackle and then maybe shifting inside depending on how that goes and depending on how Laken Tomlinson plays as well. But options of plenty when you draft Peter Skoronski. I think that's a big part of the appeal here and good value here at 15 as well. Then we get to Washington at 16. They always do something a little weird. I've been pretty much going corner the whole time, this whole cycle for Washington. But I'm going to change it before my final, predictive mock, so we'll see how this fares. But I'm going to go with O'Cyrus Torrence. He'd have to flip over to play left guard, but I think this guy with the mass and the people-moving ability, I think he's exactly the guard that Ron Rivera has in mind, and he's an upgrade over Andrew Norwell in my books. And going back to Rivera, I just think about him saying, I want to run the ball 2-to-1 ratio over pass. And I'm like, well, that plus they have Sam Howell, first-year starter. Yeah, I could see them prioritizing trenches and trying to make that run game that much more lethal. And adding O'Cyrus Torrence definitely does that. You, again, have to flip him over to left guard, but that's a plug-and-play starter, and then you lean into the depth of a cornerback class and take one in round 2. But I also don't rule out Bijan Robinson here. They could be a sneaky Bijan landing spot. Then for Pittsburgh, Broderick Jones. This one's easy. Got to build the picket fence, and you draft Broderick Jones. You hope to clean up his hand placement and some of those other pass pro concerns that people have spotted throughout this entire cycle. And then Dan Moore just becomes this pseudo-experienced third-year swing tackle, which is fine. And then hopefully we see Chukwuma Okorafor continue the growth he's had over the last couple of seasons. And then with the work they've done on the interior offensive line, if Broderick Jones hits, kind of like the Bears, this goes from a problem unit on the roster to one of the relative strengths on paper. Next, speaking of Bijan, he is going to come off the board here at 18 to the Detroit Lions. Would love to see Bijan behind that offensive line. I'm not done with the Lions here in the first round either. But Bijan behind that old line, there's going to be plenty of holes for him to run through. He has got great vision, great contact balance. He can win with power, speed. He's got a great receiving profile as well. I mean, there's not much you can't ask Bijan Robinson to do. So, and I think this opens up the door to trade DeAndre Swift. I kind of feel like that's inevitable about now. And honestly, I would trade it for a 2024 pick. Try to get more value by just having it, have to sit and wait and not be able to use it this year, essentially. But I think that would be the right move that I would follow if I were Brad Holmes in the Detroit Lions. And then Bijan Robinson, David Montgomery, it's a nice backfield to have there in the Motor City. All right, next up, Tampa Bay. I'm going to give him Darnell Wright. So he falls just a little bit in this mock. We started to see where he could go as high as 9, maybe to Chicago. But here, plug-and-play starter at right tackle. We'll move Tristan Wirfs over to left tackle, which I think he is more than capable of making that flip. And then you're just giving Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, those guys a stable, tackle duo this year and a chance to maybe prove themselves, while also kind of positioning your offensive line to not have major needs when you may be looking at quarterback top of 2024 draft board. All right, then we get to Seattle at 20, but in typical John Snyder fashion and Pete Carroll fashion, I do feel like they're going to try to engineer a trade back in this spot. I do think the Giants could be interested in coming up, especially if it's only pick 89. Now, if I did give up this third, I could go down another, draft route for the Giants. But here, I'm going to have them move up and draft Jordan Addison. Slider build, and he's 5'11", so is he that much taller as well than the guys they already have on roster? No, but he is. Just add him into the group of the guys they already have on paper. He is the guy I feel the most comfortable with getting open, playing and play out. To me, he is, this route running savant and someone I can trust to come open in big plays. And that's really, I don't think they have a guy like that. So yeah, a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter build than maybe what people were hoping, but I've been calling him Stephon Diggs light. Brian Dable, obviously there's kind of a connection there. He might like this skill set. And I do think Addison's another guy that can win a ton over the middle of the field, working that 10 to 20 yard range. You add Darren Waller to kind of do the same thing. That's where Daniel Jones targets the most. So I think this is a good natural fit to that offense. Then we get to the Chargers here at 21. I've been hearing a lot of buzz about Dalton Kincaid and the Chargers and some love there. So I'm going to roll with it here. I do think that Kellen Moore is, looking at the tight end room and being like, well, I had Dalton Schultz in Dallas. Not the same guys here. Donald Parham, big guy, but not a whole lot more than that. He's 6'7", and Gerald Everett's getting old, pretty close to 30 now. So I think they could look for that true dynamic high-end pass catcher at the tight end spot, and that's exactly what Dalton Kincaid is. So it's not Kellen Moore making the picks, but I could see them looking at that difference between Dallas and LA and trying to unlock this offense and try to get that much more out of Justin Herbert. And while it's not adding speed at wide receiver, we'll do that later on in this video. This is adding a different dynamism to that offense, just at a different position. Then we get to Baltimore at 22. Joey Porter Jr. falls in their lap, and his dad is a former Steeler. We'll have to pour one out for him. But this is a perfect scheme fit. You pair him up with Marlon Humphrey. You have a ton of length, a ton of size there on the outside. A lot of high-end man press capabilities. But also, I think Porter's a good enough athlete to play zone. Naturally, man press. You can play cover 2, 4, 6. But I don't think he's left on an island either, metaphorically speaking, that is, in cover 3. I think he'll be fine. I do worry a little bit about not having that 3-cone number. But everything else to me says Joey Porter Jr. is going to be a stud. And it's a big area of need for Baltimore. Before we get to Minnesota, I'm going to actually have them trade out of this pick. The Vikings and Baltimore both could trade down from where they're currently at just because they don't have that second-round pick. So I could see them both being organizations that says, hey, can we turn this 1 first into 2 other day 2 picks? And here, that's exactly what I have Minnesota do, with the Raiders coming up to 23 to draft Hendon Hooker. Been hearing that they like Hooker, so I'll ride that hype train and say that they're going to have Hendon Hooker sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo this year, learn the playbook, and then eventually become the starter. And also drafting Hooker here, when was the last time we saw Jimmy Garoppolo play 17 games? We may see Hendon Hooker on the field earlier than just year 2 of his NFL career. So there's a lot to like about Hooker. I do worry about his translation from that hype offense to the NFL level. But that being said, I think he has a lot of the traits that Josh McDaniels would like and covet and be willing to move up for. Then we get to the Jags here at 24. You guys already know. Brian Branch, that is the move. I love that Mock Draft Database has Brian Branch as their 24th player. It's almost just like a sign to me that he should be a Jag. But yeah, he rounds out that secondary perfectly. You play him in the slot. Darius Williams moves out wide. And he kind of plays 2 spots at once, strong safety and nickel. So you can kind of rotate him in with Rayshon Jenkins, Andre Sisco, and then Trey Herndon, who currently plays the slot. So love the versatility that Branch brings. I think adds another element to that secondary. Then Seattle, after trading back, I'm just going to give them John Michael Schmitz here. I have a hard time thinking they're going to leave this draft without finding that center of the future. I think John Michael Schmitz could do that. Good movement skills, good on those reach blocks, so I think he fits that zone blocking scheme, but also plays with a mean streak and an attitude, and he's tough. He's a little over 300 pounds, but he plays stronger than that. So I feel like he's checking all the Pete Carroll, John Schneider boxes here and addresses a major area of need. Dallas then at 26. I'm going to go Michael Mayer. I've been hearing a lot of love for this fit as well. Bijan's off the board. Thought about Pollard, but I'm going to go running back in the 3rd round instead for Dallas with someone who I think would make a really fun 1-2 punch with Tony Pollard. But here, Michael Mayer, he could be an upgrade over Jake Ferguson, Peyton Hendershot. Do I think you need to go tight end? No. But his blocking capabilities, I think, makes him a valuable asset on early downs. Plus, he, a lot of people have comped him to Jason Witten, and I think he's a slightly more athletic Jason Witten in a lot of ways. And he might be the most, talented contested catch receiver, wide receiver or tight end, bar none, in this class. So I think that's an element that Dak Prescott would certainly covet, and just someone to work the middle of the field on top of CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and Michael Gallup and Jalen Tolbert. Love adding one more weapon around Dak Prescott and just making sure that offense is not going to run out of firepower. Next up, Buffalo at 27. I'm going to go Jack Campbell. Need to replace the size, the mass, but also the athleticism of Tremaine Edmunds. And while I don't think Campbell's quite the athlete that Edmunds is, and almost surely he is not the athlete that Tremaine Edmunds is, he does play with that size and that weight. And considering he's the lone linebacker that has that prototypical 6'4", 245-pound build, I do think he's going to be the first linebacker off the board. And he's a better athlete than what we expected. So I also think that created some momentum for him later on in this stretch. And while he's not Tremaine Edmonds level athlete, he is still a solid athlete. And really, he, with his size and mass and willingness to play the run, right, like take on blocks, and he has great read and react skills, in my opinion, to go find the ball carrier, make a play on him. That's kind of true by his 95th percentile 3-cone. You're also keeping Matt Milano clean with all that he does in the run game, he being Jack Campbell in this situation, because Milano a little bit lighter, more of a coverage specialist. I'd prefer to keep blocks away from Milano, and instead, let's have Campbell eat him up here at 27. Then Cincinnati at 28, Darnell Washington. So I think this might be the first mock that I have on the channel where I get 3 tight ends in the first round. I beat the buzzer there. But I do think he has a lot of the skill sets that Cincinnati would covet. Could go offensive tackle here. But let's say they'll give Lyle Collins one more shot. They address maybe it at a later pick. And then they take basically a 6th offensive lineman here with Darnell Washington, who also is a fluid athlete given his insane frame at 6'7" and 265 pounds. So there's some untapped potential there as a receiver, and I'm going to leave it to Cincinnati to mine that potential out of him. And even if it's a limited route tree, I think with his athleticism, his frame, and his strength, he's going to be a brute, kind of yards after the catch guy, which adds a different element that this offense really doesn't have right now. So I like that fit, but mostly you talk about it because of the blocking impact that Washington would make, and that would be big time for sure. Next up, New Orleans, I'm going to give him Brian Brzee here at 29. I just think he's kind of the perfect David Onyemata replacement, while also having the size, the athleticism, and the weight, all those typical athletic traits that New Orleans covets. Brian Brzee just falls right in their lap and addresses a position of need, replacing Onyemata. I think you're getting a high-end run defender right away, but then you got to develop that pass rush plan and some of his hand placement and the moves in general. But I think once you solidify this guy into one position, as long as he stays healthy, he'll have a pretty steep learning curve. I think he'll get there pretty quick, honestly, and quicker than a lot of people are expecting. Next up, we're going to have Philadelphia actually trade back from 30. So I told you we got 6 trades in this 3-round mock. So moving back from 30 is Philadelphia, and making a splash, trying to take the NFC North for themselves is the Detroit Lions. It's going to cost pick 48 and 81. They move up to 30 and get Deonte Banks, who's falling down the board just ever so slightly, just enough for the Lions to say, yep, that's our guy. A tremendous man press corner to fit that man press heavy defense with Aaron Glenn as the DC, but also experience in a lot of different zone coverages. So whatever the assignment, I think Deonte Banks is up for the task. 4.35 speed, ideal height and weight, and you see the man coverage ability. And when he's at guys at the line of scrimmage, you see the physicality he plays with, too. He's not just a freak athlete, but he is a strong guy, too. So I think he's, a perfect scheme fit for that defense. And then kind of adds that long-term potential CB1 factor that we didn't get to add with the first 2 selections. And, him plus Mosley plus Sutton. Okay, that gives you a really nice cornerback trio as of right now. Plus Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who will play a little nickel, a little strong safety. Then we get to Kansas City to round out round number 1. I'm going to go Will McDonald. In this meantime, I'm going to talk about this pick and then reset, show you all the board with who's still available. But, Will McDonald is awesome blend of arm length and speed and bend, and honestly playing out of position at Iowa State. I think he's going to get that much better once he finds his true spot at the NFL level. So adding him in a rotation with George Karlaftis and Charles Omenihu, I just think that creates a trio that all 3, maybe not McDonald, but the first 2 certainly can stop the run at a high level, and then all 3 of those guys can get after the quarterback at a pretty good rate, which for a team that's going to be winning a lot of games, that comes in handy. They'll be playing a lot of games from ahead, too, so having that pass rush is big time. All right, on to the second round. We start with the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting Mozzie Smith, freaky athlete, and I think he could easily sneak into the first round, but I think him and Benton come off the board pretty quickly here towards the top of the second, and this is just a guy the Steelers don't have right now. Their run defense has been pretty up and down over the last couple of years. Try to find that big 2-gapping nose tackle here with Mozzie, who also comes with some pass rush upside, given that he is an unbelievable athlete. There's a reason why he was Bruce Feldman's number 1 freak athlete pre-season. All right, and then Quentin Johnston fell to the first round, so pretty easy pick for me to make here for the Houston Texans. We got that defensive cornerstone piece at 8, and then we drafted our QB of the future, Will Levis, who has a howitzer for an arm. So let's go get him a guy who can fall under that, deep ball. And Quentin Johnston definitely has the long speed, but also such a good yak and satellite weapon that he can make the offense easy, too, for Will Levis. Just get the ball out quick and let a playmaker like Quentin Johnston do what he does with the ball in his hands. So guy that can win at multiple levels of the field, and I really do think has all the traits to become a wide receiver 1. Thus why he's my wide receiver 1 this draft cycle. Next up, Arizona. They will not hesitate to take Kalijah Kancey. He falls out of the first round. It's been a while since I've had that happen in a mock, but I don't think it's impossible, right? Because we're not only talking short and a little bit on the lighter side, right around 280 for a D-tackle. but also 3 percentile arm length. So let's just say in this case he falls a little bit, but Arizona, they're willing to take the risk because it's early second round, not as much risk associated with this pick. And who else is there across that defensive line? Who's bringing that pass rush juice? I'll wait. We'll run out of time for this video. So, Kalachi Kansas gives him that juice, that explosive guy at the line of scrimmage, and gives them somebody to work and try to generate that pass rush up front. All right, next we get to Indianapolis at 35. Another easy selection here. Isaiah McKenzie's not a bad player, but Zay Flowers might just be better. And also, Isaiah McKenzie misses a ton of time for injuries, so it's probably a position they're looking to find a more full-time fixture there. Anyways, and Zay Flowers easily another guy who could go round one. But here I just had the board kind of push him out of the top 31 picks, where there's always a few surprises here, and we're here in the NFL doesn't love this wide receiver class, so QJ, Zay, I could see them both kind of falling out of the top 31 picks. But here you play Zay Flowers in the slot. He gives you the yak ability that Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. just don't really possess, while also giving you one more threat to take off the top of the defense. So love what Zay Flowers could do, and it kind of does a lot of the same stuff I talked about with Quentin Johnston and Houston. All right, at 36, I'm going to give the Los Angeles Rams Cam Smith after trading Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, they're missing a big-time impact player there on the outside. I like Cam Smith a little bit more in zone coverage versus man and cover 4, heavy defense here with Raheem Morris as the DC. I think it's kind of a perfect blend of his skill set and also has fantastic ball skills. So in a zone-heavy defense where he's got his eyes on a quarterback, I think this is a great scheme for him to land in, and we get to see that playmaking ability pretty much right away. Then here at 37, I'm going to give Seattle Keanu Benton. Again, I think these two nose tackles come off the board pretty quick. Benton, to me, I think truly could play the nose, even though he's only like 311 pounds. Just maybe add a little bit of weight. He plays bigger than that, in my opinion. I was really surprised to see that weigh in at the Combine or his Pro Day, wherever we got that number. But explosive, more athletic than people want to give him credit for. Developed hand, placement and a move set, and then also eats, blocks, chews space, and stops the run at a high level. So not much more you can ask for. It's just that maybe a little bit older of a prospect and not as athletic as Mozzie Smith, and then was a little bit of a late bloomer. So it feels like a guy who had to do it the hard way versus Mozzie Smith, who is an insane athlete. So if you iron out his consistency, it may come a little quote unquote easier to him. All right, next up, Minnesota, another easy selection here. Jalen Hyatt. Just to have someone to be a mean clear-out dude for Justin Jefferson alone, awesome value here. Not that Justin Jefferson needs any help getting open over the middle of the field, but a clear-out guy will certainly help in that area, but also a guy to just threaten over the top of the defense. Maybe they already have this guy in KJ Osborne, so this should be Jonathan Mingo or someone at Marvin Mims, maybe a little bit later on at pick 70 or something. But I like the over-the-top, playmaking ability. We see Kevin O'Connell coming over from LA. He was part of the coaching staff with the drafted Tutu Atwell. So that over-the-top threat, that speed demon, is something also they signed Deshaun Jackson, right? Like while he was in LA. So I think this is a skill set that O'Connell would covet here. And while I do like Osborne, Jalen Hyatt might just be a better version of that. We just don't know yet. So maybe be a little bit lower on Hyatt than most, but I do think that over-the-top speed-making threat, adding that second wide receiver in the mix here, plus some underrated yak ability, does bring a lot of benefit to this Minnesota offense. Then at 39, I'm going to give Carolina Jonathan Mingo. So I just talked about him a little bit, and Mingo's an underrated prospect and a name that got hot pretty late just because the production wasn't there. But then you watch the film, and it's like, this guy could do just about anything I need him to do. He just didn't have the quarterback play to really showcase that and have catches to kind of back it up. But otherwise, yeah, a guy who could win at all 3 levels with his route running, a great yak threat, sacks DBs, can win deep down the field, 6'1", 215 pounds, mid 4.4 speed. He's got everything else. He just doesn't have an insane production. I've been hearing a lot of rumors that Carolina really likes him, so I think the fit could make a lot of sense. And he could kind of be that jack of all trades, while they also have guys who were specialists like, Terrence Marshall, probably the possession guy, and DJ Chark to threaten over the top, and then Laviska Shenault is the gadget. Like, he could be the jack of all trades while they have those other specialists on paper. Then we get to New Orleans here at 40. I'm going to give him Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Could easily go round 1 to maybe Kansas City at 31. But a speedy, bendy edge rusher, and I think a guy who could be that third fiddle behind Cam Jordan and Peyton Turner right away. And then maybe they add a little bit of mass and he becomes a Cam Jordan replacement. But for right now, adding that third pass rusher, that's something that New Orleans always covets. And I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah is someone who can make an impact pretty much right away. And I love his bend and that first step explosiveness and that athleticism on top of what they already have with the other 2 guys there. Then Arizona here at 41 after the trade back at 11. I'm going to give him B.J. Ojulari. So they draft two kind of smaller guys, Kancey and Ojulari. Maybe that's a little problematic, but you play the cards you're dealt. And Kancey is good value there at 34 and a guy who should make impact right away. And the same can be said about B.J. Ojulari. I mean, developed moveset, great hand placement, added the inside counter over the last year at LSU, so he can attack both shoulders of an offensive tackle. There's not a whole lot in his game that needs to be refined. It's just he needs to get bigger and stronger, which, this team's in a 2-year retool anyway, so why not have, a developed guy there in the building and then just try to bulk him up with some time. I could see that being their, kind of MO and their strategy here. But just as much as I talked about, hey, who's that guy on the interior making a play? Who's that guy right now on the edge? Because it's a question mark in Cam Thomas. It's a question mark in Monte Sanders. I think adding that third guy into the mix is not a bad thing, especially when that guy is more developed from a pass rush standpoint than those other two. And additionally, Thomas Sanders could also, because of their weight, play those early downs. And then maybe B.J. Ojulari is just this souped-up third down specialist, which is not a bad thing to add to that defense whatsoever. Green Bay here at 42. I'm going to go Tank Dell, and I'm going to go offense heavy here in the second round. And this is kind of, I think, if Green Bay is going to go get pass catchers for Jordan Love, it's going to be here at 42 and 45. But Tank Dell to play the slot, one more over-the-top threat, has different speed than Christian Watson, but also a ton of yak and gadget ability, and a guy who is a high-volume receiver at Houston. I wonder what his target share in that offense would be. I would hope kind of around that Christian Watson level and a little bit more than Romeo Doubs, but I think that's a really solid young trio to work with and build around with Jordan Love. Then we get the Jets here at 43. I'm going to go Adetomiwa Adebawore. I think this team's interior defensive line could use one more guy to line up next to Quinnen Williams. And Adebawore, or as one of my subscribers coined it, the Alphabet, which is a great nickname for him. The Alphabet next to Quinnen Williams, I think, is a really nice 1-2 punch. And this guy plays with both power and length and speed, but he does it all from kind of the edge. I kind of like him moving more inside. And I think this is the exact right kind of front for him to fill in. And I do think, Robert Saleh could have some flexibility and move him around. Maybe do take, give him some snaps there on the edge. But him next to Quinnen Williams, I think, is a good replacement there for Sheldon Rankins. And they could go Trenton Simpson or maybe another wide receiver here, maybe just to make Aaron Rodgers that much more happy. But I was looking at our lads, looking at that, what's that biggest problem area? And I think it might be that second IDL spot. And Adebawore here at 43, another guy who would easily go round one. So I think this is some solid value. Atlanta here at 44. I'm going to give him DJ Turner. Look, if you run a 6'2", 8, 3 cone and a 4'2", 640, you're going to go pretty high. So I'm trusting the athletic profile here for Turner to kind of boost him up a board. And he's a little small, a little light, so maybe nickel corner kind of fits out better for him anyways. So with the Jeff Okudah trade, if he works out, maybe your corner trio is Okudah and Terrell on the outside, plus then Turner in the slot. I don't hate that whatsoever. Or if Turner just outright wins the job and, kind of like what he did at Michigan, plays beyond his height and his weight, him and AJ Terrell could be an awesome outside corner duo. And then Jeff Okudah gave up a 5th round or whatever. He let that go. It's not that big of a loss. So just kind of have basically Okudah and Turner figure out who's going to be that second outside guy. And then maybe the loser of that outside corner position just moves inside to play the nickel. And then that secondary is looking really, really healthy and really, really good. In addition to Jesse Bates, a big-time free agent signing this offseason. Back to Green Bay. I'm going to go Luke Musgrave here. Kind of got lost in the cycle because he didn't have the combine that everyone wanted, but still think a really good athlete, just maybe not all time. And what we got to see this year, and small sample size admittedly, but Senior Bowl, a couple games at Oregon State, good route runner, good hands, and I think some yards after the catch ability given his athleticism, and a big time upgrade over anybody that Green Bay has on roster right now. So whether it's Musgrave or Laporta, I'd be fine with either one of these guys here at 45. And now it's 3 receivers deep. It's Luke Musgrave at tight end, weapons galore for Jordan Love. 46, I'm going to give New England Patriots Anton Harrison. The board kind of lucked out and played in their favor here. Anton Harrison slips a little bit, makes it there, and he can be their left tackle of the future. And then you move Trent Brown over to right tackle. So love his pass protection and love his experience too. Multi-year starter at Oklahoma, feels battle tested. I just feel confident that this guy can be a plug and play starter in a pass protection standpoint from day one. And then again, I think Trent Brown gets that much better when you move him over to right tackle. And then those two could be your tackle tandem this year, and then maybe for the next year or two after. But getting a tackle somewhere here in the top 50 is big time to find a way and find a guy to be one of those long-term starters. Washington here at 47. I'm going to give him Emmanuel Forbes. Admittedly, a guy I'm not as excited about as others, just because that 166-pound mark is, it's a little tough, and some of his picks are a little lucky, But that being said, I do think he has great zone coverage feel. And for Jack Del Rio's defense, cover 3 heavy, this could be a nice spot for him to land, while also having really solid, 40 time and arm length and 6'1" frame. He's kind of got a lot of those traits that says, hey, this guy could play some man coverage. But I think that's part of where the ball production came. This guy can, be a freaky athlete, plant his foot, go make a play on a ball, go make that break. But also with his arm length and his height in general, he can, he plays bigger than 166. I just worry that might not translate quite the same at the NFL level. But yeah, I think this is the potential cornerback that Washington is looking for, and who could be that CD1 long term. I think Forbes could be that guy, and especially his feel for zone coverage. I feel pretty good about him being plugged into a cover 3 heavy Jack Del Rio system. Then we get to Philadelphia here at 48, and I don't know if they would make this pick this early, but Trenton Simpson plus Nakobe Dean, okay, I'm here for that. That's some awesome athletes. And Dean, a big problem for him was like he's sub 6 foot and he's a little light. Simpson is kind of like the new age linebacker build where, Jack Campbell's your prototypical style. Trenton Simpson is, 6'2.5", 230 pounds. And that's what linebackers look like nowadays. But 4.43 speed, can play the nickel, which I think would be interesting if they decided to do that. But a willing, player in the run game, can take on blocks, good tackler as well, can shoot gaps. So I think you're getting a well-rounded linebacker. It's just you have to kind of get over the fact he's not 240, 245 like a Jack Campbell. He is this new age linebacker. But that being said, he is still bigger than Nakobe Dean. But that would be a really athletic 1-2 punch there in the middle of that Philly defense. Then Pittsburgh at 49. Let's give him Julius Brents. They had a top 30 visit with him. And when you sign Pat Pete, you're telling me you're going to play more zone coverage this year. And I think Brents can play man coverage, but putting him in a zone-heavy defense would be really, really exciting because of that arm length and the 6'6", 3 cone, the ability to read, react, and make a play on a football, and got to plant that back foot and go make a play on the ball. And I think Pittsburgh, even with Pat Pete, it's like, who's that long-term guy? Who is that corner one of the future? Brents could be that guy, and I'm a big-time Julius Brents fan, top 45 on my big board, and a guy I'm really excited to see where he goes this upcoming weekend, but would love to see it in the black and gold there in Pittsburgh, pairing him up with Pat Pete. Then at 50, I'm going to give Tampa Bay Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, I know there's some Rachaad White fans, specifically in my comment section and across the board. I know some people like Rachaad White, but no team does it with one running back. It's a committee. And Gibbs plus Rachaad White, I mean, that's a really interesting tandem. And I talked about this a little bit with Dallas before, where I've had Gibbs mocked there, where it's him and Pollard, similar skill sets. Same thing here with Gibbs and White, but that's not a bad thing. That's kind of where the NFL is kind of moving anyways, having more pass catchers on the field. Okay, yes, more big playability with these speedy, elusive, quick backs. Again, that's kind of where the league is wanting to move anyways. So if Rachaad White does pick up where he kind of left off last year, good. That's a really good committee then. That makes the backfield that much stronger. But, 4.36 speed, fantastic receiving ability, awesome vision, great one cut and, jump cut capabilities here. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, as much as Bijan is the full package, Jahmyr Gibbs is power short of being the complete package. So not too far off. And that's why he's kind of like Bijan's 1A for sure, 1A tier. But Jahmyr Gibbs kind of like 1B tier. I don't think he's too far off, but he's obviously not Bijan. Next up, Miami at 51. Let's go Sam Laporta. I think this fit makes all the sense in the world. High-end athlete, solid blocker, but could get even better. And it's an opportunity to kind of give Mike McDaniels that George Kittle-esque player in the offense. Now, Laporta comes from Iowa, but he is not the capable blocker that George Kittle is, who's essentially an extra offensive lineman. But I do think he is a solid blocker and could get even better. But you're drafting him because of the athletic ability, the yards after the catch stuff, and the route running prowess, the soft hand, and it's just one more weapon for defenses to account for on top of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So it makes that offense that much more explosive, like they needed any more help there. Then at 52, I'm going to give Seattle Josh Downs. Trying to find that third receiver and a good guy in the yak game, which, Lockett, typically goes down before taking hits. And Metcalf's a tank, but I think Downs is a different type of yak weapon versus what Metcalf does with his size and his body. But also a guy who can win underneath, and you put him in some crossers, you can start pushing him deep down the field. He's a good athlete, solid contested catch guy. And I think by adding this third wide receiver here in the second or third round, you address some of your other needs that are maybe more glaring, but also position your offense to have, when all healthy, 3 really awesome receivers around Geno, who you just paid, or in the event that Lockett goes down or Metcalf misses time, you at least have 2 guys who can keep the ship afloat. Then we get to the Bears at 53. I'm going to go Isaiah Foskey. Nice fit for that 4-man front, that typically 4-3 base with Eberflus, and a guy who I think can just contribute right away. Nothing that wows you athletically or anything like that from his frame standpoint, but just a polished pass rusher, Notre Dame school record holder in sacks, right? And comes at tackles with a full game plan in mind. It knows how to set up one move with another and then come back to it and then counter off of it. He's got that full kind of cerebral approach to the position. I think his NFL readiness could be a big asset to Chicago, because right now I don't know if they have any immediate contributors there on the defensive line. At least not guys that, all these guys are in the NFL, so they're contributors, but no one who's like, wow, this guy is going to take a game over. I think Foskey could pretty much right away plug into that starting rotation, and then we could see, hey, maybe he does have that within him, and maybe that pass rush, prowess and acumen and that approach to the pass rush plan does put him over the top. Next up, Chargers at 54. Let's go Tuli Tuipulotu. I think this is a defense that would be really suited by adding one more edge rusher in the event that Bosa misses time, in the event that Mac misses some time. And Tuipulotu, while I wish we had his athletic numbers, it's just so polished at getting off blocks, both in the run game, but also as a pass rusher. And 6'3", 266 pounds. He is one of the heavier edge rushers still on the board here. So I think a solid add. And then, if all works out and those other 2 guys, Bosa and Max, stay healthy, then Tuli Tuipulotu just becomes the 3rd guy in the mix there, and that pass rush gets that much more legit, and hopefully that cleans up some of the secondary issues the team had last year. At 55, I'm going to give the Detroit Lions Cedric Tillman. Obviously, you have the 6-game suspension for Jameson Williams, but I don't think you need to replace him by any stretch. Cedric Tillman's just a different wide receiver, but nonetheless, adding that other wide receiver to kind of keep the ship afloat, again, using that analogy, while Jameson Williams out of the lineup, I think is beneficial. But Tillman's your prototypical 6'3", 215 pounds, box out, possession, contested catch wide receiver. And in 2021, looked like a better athlete than in 2022 while he was battling an injury. So there might be even more potential there in the mix for Tillman. But I am drafting him solely with the focus in mind of playing him at the X. Amon-Ra St. Brown still is the volume guy at the slot. And then J-Mo is this guy who can attack all 3 levels. But let's force, defenses to respect that over the top speed and see if we can create some big plays with Jameson Williams once he's off the suspension. And to me, that's a really well-rounded wide receiver trio. The Jags here at 56 are not going to make this pick. At least they're not going to pick just yet. I'm going to actually have them trade back to the team they lost to in the AFC wild card. And then the Kansas City Chiefs are going to give up their 2nd, 4th, and their 2nd, 5th, come up to 56, and draft an offensive tackle in DeJuan Jones. Plug and play him at right tackle. You'd sign Jawan Taylor to play left tackle, and all of a sudden I'm feeling a whole lot better about that situation. I still kind of hope Darian Kennard can maybe earn that job. I'd love to see what that looks like. I think he could play tackle or be an awesome Joe Thuney replacement at left guard at the same time. So opportunities to play for Kennard, but drafting DeJuan Jones here, especially after a trade up, would signal, hey, this guy is going to be our starter, big, tall, physical guy, and a lot of comps have been made to Orlando Brown Jr. And I bet if you told Kansas City they could get Orlando Brown Jr. on a rookie contract and he's willing to play right tackle, they would be like, yes, cool, where do we sign? And that's kind of what they get here with DeJuan Jones, if you think that comp is fair. Next, the Giants at 57. This is one that I have mocked plenty of times. I'm going to go Drew Sanders, the perfect Wink Martindale linebacker. Pair him up with Bobby Okereke. Sanders is the blitzer. Okereke does just about everything else. And you can even play Sanders some at edge. I think they might even kind of rotate him in there and see what that's all about as well during his rookie season. High-end athlete, but room to grow and run defense and pass coverage. But with this fit, this defense, it'd be a focus on being a pass rusher where I think Sanders could thrive. Then for Dallas, another pick that I make a lot, Dian Henley, and we're going to go running back then in the 3rd round like I noted up top. But Henley, awesome coverage capabilities, freaky athlete, and you got Leighton Vander Esch there to kind of eat blocks and keep Henley clean as much as possible. But Henley does have good capabilities of shooting gaps, but I just love his coverage upside, whether it's man or zone. He can do a whole lot and just shore up that defense that much more, because I don't think they have this type of coverage ability in the middle of the field. Buffalo here at 59. Let me flip over my notes. I'm going to give him Steve Avila. To me, the best interior pass protector in the class, and for an offense that's going to pass as much or more than any team in the NFL, the fit is naturally there. And guard center flexibility, so he could play, for Ryan Bates at right guard, or he could be long-term Mitch Morse replacement at center. I think he's got the capabilities of being a high-level player at both. But really, I'm making this pick because, may not have the movement skills totally that, some of the Bills' offensive linemen have had in the past, but he's certainly more agile than Roger Saffold. And if you're willing to take a flyer on Saffold, I think it's worth taking the flyer on Avila and getting that pass protection prowess in the mix as well. Then here at 60, I'm going to give Cincinnati Tyreek Stevenson. I think a guy who is probably best suited to play cover, or man press and then cover 2, 4, 6 off of it. But I don't think would be any liability per se in cover 3. And Lou Anarumo mixes it up. So in a perfect world, this is Emmanuel Forbes or DJ Turner, but those guys are already gone. So you play the cards you're dealt. And I do think Tyreek Stevenson still is a quality add. You got Chidobe Awuzie last year for his contract, Tyreek Stevenson last year for his contract, already turnover at the safety position. So adding another piece there somewhere in the secondary, I think Stevenson presents good value here. Could also be Sidney Brown, honorable mention to him, but I think adding one more piece to the secondary, trying to shore up that position long term goes a long way. And then eventually, when those guys leave, if they do leave, you're looking to add one starter, maybe 2, as opposed to 2, 3, or replacing the entire unit, really. Then we get to Chicago at 61. I'm going to go Keely Ringo here. He fell a little bit, but I still like the idea of Ringo, especially in a cover 2 heavy defense where he's going to press the line of scrimmage, which we know he's great at, and then just sit in that soft squat zone and chill at the line of scrimmage, where you kind of take away his lateral concerns and some of the other issues that kind of came up throughout this draft cycle, where it's like, okay, he's a good straight line athlete, but everything else he kind of struggles with. I think cover 2 defense is the perfect place for him to be. Plus, he's got those long arms, can kind of poke his hands into receiving pockets, all that sort of stuff. And then you move Kyler Gordon in the nickel, where I think he'd be a really good player too. So maybe Jalen Johnson, Gordon in the nickel, Keely Ringo hopefully hitting on the outside. That becomes a really nice young corner trio, really cheap unit as well. So you can spend that money in the salary cap elsewhere. But again, I think this is kind of the perfect defense for Keely Ringo to get drafted into, and it takes away a lot of those athletic concerns that we've seen kind of pop up. Next, Philadelphia. I'm going to give him Chandler Zavala. Big time pro day riser. We got to see the athleticism on top of being 320 pounds, and then great tape both as a run blocker and a mover of people, but also a polished pass protector too. So I think you plug Chandler Zavala in right away at left guard, and boom, there's your Isaac Seumalo replacement. Cam Jurgens sits, chills for a year, and then eventually takes over for Jason Kelce at center, and then we'll address right tackle whenever Lane Johnson hangs them up. And then at 63 or 63 rather, I'm going to give Matt Bergeron to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He could be one of 2 things: either a Walker Little competition piece at right tackle, or an upgrade over Ben Barch at left guard. I know a lot of people are moving Bergeron to interior offensive line in their position rankings, and I can totally see it. I'm fine with either one, to be honest with you. There might be more ceiling there at guard just naturally. It feels like that always happens, just like the MLB draft. Shortstops get drafted and then they move to second or third, and your center fielders get drafted and they get to the bigs and they're playing left field. Feels like just one of those kind of spots here for Bergeron where draft tackles and maybe they're better at guard. But given that flexibility, it's a potential starter at 2 different areas for Jacksonville, which I think will go a long way. And I think his run blocking ability would make the life of Travis Etienne that much easier. Tangent aside, we're on to round number 3 now. We start off with Carl Brooks. Love him as that potential 3-tech disruptor there on the inside. He's just so polished as a pass rusher, showed he could hold his own at the Senior Bowl, and could be a sneaky way for Chicago to find that 3-tech. And with his pass rush acumen, I think he could be an underrated guy to fill that role. And instead of doing it at pick 9 or somewhere there in the second, you do it here to start off the 3rd round. Really interesting spot to find that key cornerstone piece. Cody Mock lasted a little bit longer than he normally does my mocks, but give him to Houston. Could be your right guard of the future, replacing Shaq Mason. I think right now you play him at center, and to be honest with you, I think that's probably his best position. So plug and play starter there, great on the move, and a guy who is still learning the position. But that being said, has already made so many big strides in the right direction, and still probably needs to add a little bit of mass unless he sticks at center, where I do think he's probably the right weight. But a guy who started playing O-line, 4 years ago? So steep curve, and still a lot of room for him to grow, which makes him that much more intriguing of a prospect, because he's already one of those guys that in the right scheme, with him doing a whole lot of pulling and being active in the run game, he's already a pretty solid starter. Then we get to Arizona here at 66. I'm going to give them Joe Tippmann, another center. Tippmann and Whippler lasting on the board a little bit longer than normal, but that's about to come to a close. Arizona needs a center. Tippmann also has guard flexibility, and whether it's left guard or center, the Cardinals need a big-time upgrade there, so not much more to say other than Joe Tippmann. 6'6", good mover, would give you one of either a left guard starter or a center starter. And then for Denver, let's go ahead and start Luke Whippler, get the other center off the board. I think could be an upgrade over Lloyd Cushenberry. I think not. The only reason it might not be is if Lloyd Cushenberry figures it out in year 3. Otherwise, that's an upgrade there at center, which is the one position they haven't addressed just yet this offseason. And then here at pick 68, I'm going to give him Garrett Williams. I think it would be a really fun add to that defense. Van Joseph typically runs a lot of press man, and those are the traits that Garrett Williams possesses while playing in a zone-heavy Syracuse team. So it's a little bit of an odd mix and match, but I do think that it kind of made him more well-rounded and all the better for it. He has great footwork, and I think that kind of translates from playing in a team, playing in a zone-heavy defense. So we'd love to see him be that potential Demery Mathis upgrade, or at least like the third guy, just in case Sertan Mathis, something like that, one of those guys goes down. So at worst, it's just added cornerback depth, which you can't have enough of, especially when it's past Sertan, and then you're already kind of looking for that potential cornerback too. Rams here at 69. I'm going to give him Derek Hall. We haven't addressed edge yet, so let's go give him a guy who I think could easily go in round 2. He's got really good ability to take speed and turn it into power. He's like 82nd percentile arm length, but also really fiery at the line of scrimmage, really good get off. And again, he plays a little stiff, but it's because he's playing so upright that he's trying to put his hands into tackle's chest. He's like unrelentlessly attacking offensive tackle's chest, which I don't hate, but there is more moves to add to his game. But right now the Rams don't have really any options there at edge. So any pass rush production they can get, I think they'll take it. And Derek Hall, I think, does give you kind of that immediacy because he knows what he wins with. And that speed and that arm length, I think, is enough to kind of give him production early on. Minnesota at pick 70. I'm going to give him one of my guys that I've fallen more and more in love with the more I talk about him and the more I watch him. Darius Rush. Awesome arm length, 4.36 40, ideal height. I mean, this guy is man coverage upside all over him. Where I think Cam Smith is probably a little bit better in a zone-heavy defense, I think Darius Rush is fantastic on a man-heavy defense, and that's exactly what you get here. Brian Flores wants corners that can play man press, and that's exactly what Darius Rush brings to the table. Then we get to New Orleans at 71. Look, hot take. I don't think Andrews Pete's all that good, and plus also getting a little older. So for a guy that already misses time, getting up there in age, kind of start thinking about the timeline for replacing him. And Andrew Voorhees could be a guy who starts and is a capable starter right away. So could be an Andrews Pete replacement, kind of reset the timeline there, get a little younger at the position, while also drafting a guy who has 5 years of college experience, 3 years of being a starter, and 2 years ago was one of the best interior offensive linemen in college football. So yeah, more than capable starter right away, which allows the Saints to still be competitive in the division. Tennessee here at 72. Wish we could have added maybe an edge or a center in specific. Maybe they'll bring back Ben Jones now that Connor McGovern's going back to New York. But in the meantime, here at 72, I'm going to give them Marvin Mims, that over-the-top threat that they just don't, I feel like they don't have right now. In a perfect world, I'd love to see if Mims could play on the outside so we can see what Kyle Phillips is all about in the slot, because I do think he could be a sneaky good player there. But if he does play the nickel, or in the slot rather, fine. The 4.38 speed is the main point of concern here with the selection because, assuming they're going to keep Derrick Henry, they're going to be a ground and pound, win through the run game type of team. They're going to force, secondaries to play closer and closer to the line of scrimmage, and Marvin Mims gives you that over-the-top kind of counter to make defenses respect that run game that much more. And then with that speed from Mims, it opens up the middle of the field, makes Burks that much better, makes Chigakonkwo that much better. More open windows for Tannehill and more running room for Derrick Henry. So it's this relationship of trying to round out that offense, and I think Mims brings the speed that they just don't have right now. Atlanta then at 73. I'm going to go Parker Washington. So speaking of speed, you could go with someone like Tyler Scott here and reunite him with former Bearcat Desmond Ridder, but instead I'm going to go Parker Washington, yak upside, play him in the slot, and round out that wide receiver room with Mac Hollins and Drake London, who will play on the outside, Kyle Pitts, who will do a little bit of that, play a little slot, play inline tight end. But I really like how Washington can win at all three levels. And again, really good yak player, solid contested catch ability, and it's kind of overlooked in his game. So just another wide receiver, different builds, and some different skill set that the other guys just don't have right now. 74, I'm going to give the Cleveland Browns Michael Wilson. I do think they could add one more wide receiver, and I think Wilson could just replace Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think Elijah Moore can be that over-the-top burner and that deep play threat. Amari Cooper can still do a little bit of that. And then Michael Wilson just kind of, you lean on his release sets and his underneath route running. He has 6'2", 215-pound frame, and let him box out corners. Let him do the underneath kind of dirty work, possession stuff. And then maybe we move Amari Cooper into a different role and try to maximize what else he does. But minimum, it's Cooper and it's Wilson on the outside. Both guys who are really good route runners, can get open with ease, and can work the middle of the field, work the sideline, do a lot of the same stuff. And then Elijah Moore is your kind of different, your change of pace wide receiver, for lack of a better phrase, who does the yak stuff, has the over-the-top speed, can be the burner, do all those different things the other two maybe just don't have to the same level. Atlanta then back on the clock here at 75. I'm going to give him Gervon Dexter. This is an interesting spot for him to land, and could he just sit basically for the majority of his rookie year and learn from Calais Campbell? think that sets up a really fun mentor-mentee relationship and a good spot for him to go. High-end athletic traits, and I think best suited in like a 3-4 defense. Here we're talking about a base 4-3, so not quite as ideal. But that being said, I still would love that mentor-mentee relationship. Also got Grady Jarrett there, a couple of good guys for him to learn from. And 6'6" team with his explosive first step, that's a rare kind of combination. So it's just going to take that refinement and that potential mining here, so to speak, to try to teach him as a pass rusher and make him more consistent throughout a game to be able to tap into what Gervon Dexter really could be. New England then at 76. Let's go Keon White. I'm hearing that Keon White and New England kind of like each other. I mean, like, there might be interest in the first round. So, Keon White getting that first round invite, maybe it's New England who's interested enough to make that move. Hopefully it's after a trade down. If you're taking the first round, please trade down from 14. Don't take Keon White at 14. Anyways, here he's available on the board at 76, which I think speaks to where I stand on Keon White at the moment. But nonetheless, he is kind of an interesting fit into that New England defense. High-end size, speed, kind of athlete freak build and profile, and then it's just, can we get more out of him as a pass rusher? He's already a pretty good run defender, and he's made strides in the right direction as a pass rusher, but he was starting from ground zero, so there was a lot of room for him to kind of make up, a lot of ground for him to cover to get to this point to even be considered being drafted. Can he get any better there? I will leave it to Bill Belichick and Steve Belichick and crew to figure that out, but I think his athleticism, his run-stopping ability makes him an appealing kind of fit in that defense right away anyways. Then at 77, the Rams. I'm going to give them Jared Patterson. Just a plug-and-play starter. We haven't given him interior offensive line just yet. And whether it's center or it's left guard, I think Patterson can just be a plug-and-play option there for the Rams. And, even when everyone was healthy last year, that O-line was the reason why they got off to a slow start. So let's go ahead and try to fix that here at 77. Green Bay then at 78. I'm going to give him Quan Martin. I think a really fun player who could be either a Rasul Douglas replacement or a potential free safety of the future. I kind of like him more as the free safety because he's so fast and he's so explosive with that first step, and he's gotten better as a tackler and a run defender. So I kind of want to see him play over the top and then Darnell Savage in the strong safety spot. But he could be that Rasul Douglas replacement at the same time and save you some money this year as well as next year. So options aplenty there for Quan Martin. Indianapolis then at 79. I'm going to give him a plug and play right guard. Emil Ekiyor played right guard at Alabama, was pretty good, better in the run game than pass protection, but nevertheless I do think he can get better there. And Will Fries is the weak link of that O-line at right guard. So to me, it's pretty clear. Ekiyor, immediate starter for Indianapolis, trying to get that unit back to its full strength. Pittsburgh then at 80. I'm going to go Byron Young here, especially after Bud Dupree goes to Atlanta, which that really did surprise me. I thought he would go back to Pittsburgh. It feels like they're missing that third guy. And 6'2", 250. I was like, man, Jarvis Jones, wasn't he like 6'2", 248? Yes, he was. A little bit of an older prospect. Okay, yep. But had the production, and Byron Young, has some production. I don't think it's quite the same level as Jones when he came out of Georgia, but a little bit on the older side, which may deter teams, but I think Pittsburgh could look at it as like third rounder, high-end athlete, and ready to go. And, a fully developed body, if you will, at 25 years old. Like he's mature. He's ready to go from a physical standpoint. So I could see them drafting him solely as that third pass rusher, which is something Pittsburgh covets. So I don't think the value here is like out of whack by drafting Byron Young here at 80. Then we get to Philadelphia at 81. I'm going to give him Antonio Johnson. Really nice, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson replacement or minimum if that role's like no longer in the defense because Gannon's not there. Avonte Maddox insurance. And I tell you an upgrade over Terrell Edmonds. Maybe not right away, but with some time, I think he definitely would be. I'm just not a big Terrell Edmonds guy, which is fine. Everyone has their own opinion on him. So Antonio Johnson, I think, could play strong safety or play that nickel corner and maybe play that little bit of a hybrid role like C.J. Gardner-Johnson. But, freak frame at 6'2", 200 pounds, great at coming down and playing into the box. And wish there was some more like turnover, production there, but he does everything else at a pretty high level. Tampa Bay's next up on the clock here at 82. I'm going to give him Sidney Brown. This might not be the perfect, safety combination, but Ryan Neal, who's played a lot of box safety last year in Seattle, but also played a lot of snaps over the top, so I think he's got the flexibility to do both. Maybe we ask Neal to play free safety, Sid to play strong, and then you move Antoine Winfield Jr. close to the line of scrimmage, let him play that nickel corner role. Now, that being said, between the strong and free safety, that's going to rotate between snap in and snap out. You're not going to have one refined, you're going to play strong safety and solely live in the box. That's just not a thing in the NFL anymore. So Neal plus Brown and then Winfield Jr. in the nickel, I think that's a really nice trio. And trying to get that particular position group back to where it was when they won the Super Bowl, when it was one of their more underrated big-time strengths of that roster. Then at 83, I'm going to give Seattle to Marvin Overshone. They got a little bit of an older linebacker, unit, and I think Overshone is that third fiddle behind Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner. It's a great place for him to kind of continue his progression. Cleaned up his tackling last year, so I'm looking at a guy who's safety converted to linebacker, good coverage feel. Now he's a better tackler, more sure in that field. Still needs to get better, like fill in run lanes and things like that, and maybe get a little bit better in man coverage. But 6'3", 230, kind of that new age build for linebacker. There's a lot to work with Overshone, and the fact that he's already cleaned up some of his issues shows high end work ethic, at least for as much as I can gather, considering I don't get to interview the guy. But letting him sit behind Bobby Wagner can only make him that much better. And pairing him up with Jordan Brooks, if Overshone hits, that's a really athletic 1-2 combo there in the middle of that Seattle defense. Miami next up at 84. I'm going to give him Blake Freeland. You could go linebacker here. I know some people think that Austin Jackson's going to be the starter, but Austin Jackson has not played well enough for me to have faith and confidence in him being a good starter, so I will look elsewhere, and to me that is Blake Freeland. Really good mover, a little over 300 pounds, and I think naturally then because of those movement skills, great fit for that Mike McDaniel's wide zone blocking scheme, but also a better anchor than what you might think, given he's just over 300 pounds. So I think he can hold up in pass protection too, which is just something they haven't had over the last couple of years. So to me, I think Blake Freeland is an upgrade there at right tackle. Next, the Chargers at 85. As noted, we were going to add some speed into this offense. And how's 4.3240 sound? That's what Tyler Scott ran in his pro day. And here, you're drafting him solely as a specialist. So I kind of want to explore this one time before we got to the real NFL draft, because instead of drafting Zay Flowers, who you're drafting him to be speed threat and future slot wide receiver, or Jordan Addison, same kind of thing. Here you're drafting Tyler Scott, and it's like, don't worry about the slot. Don't. That's not you. We just want you to be fast and be the over-the-top guy we threaten defenses with. And then, in a year's time, assuming they do move on from Keenan Allen or whatever ends up happening there, Josh Palmer moves into the slot, where I do think Josh Palmer would be a really good player. So as opposed to Zay Flowers or Addison or Tank Dell or Jalen Hyde or something like that in rounds 1 or 2. Here we wait a little bit, draft a guy who's going to play on the outside, better route runner than what you would expect for someone who's new to the wide receiver position, better ball tracking as well for someone who's new to playing wide receiver. And then we'll move Josh Palmer long-term into the slot to replace Keenan Allen. And I think that could work just as much as drafting one of those other wide receivers early on. Next, Baltimore at pick 86. I'm going to give them Jaden Reed here. I still think they could use one more wide receiver just because Rashad Bateman's coming off injury, OBJ's coming off injury. So what are the chances these guys get hurt again this year? It's certainly more than 0%. So I think Jaden Reed could be one plug-and-play starter in the slot, even if those guys are healthy, but also someone that they lean on pretty heavily if one of those two guys gets hurt, and then it's Bateman plus Reed, or it's OBJ plus Reed to kind of keep the ship afloat there from a pass game standpoint. Minnesota's last pick here at 87. I'm going to give him Moro Ojomo. I'm a big-time Moro Ojomo fan. I know a lot of people see him more as a fourth-rounder. I like him here in the third. Really productive player. Yes, coming from the Big 12, so you have to be kind of careful of those inflated stats in that conference. I hear you, but really just productive, and the PFF grades are there. And even when I watch him on tape, he's an explosive 6'3", 292-pound, 3-4 D end. And if Dean Lowry's starting for you, I think you can do better. And I think Ojomo's a high-level run defender right away with acumen and production as a pass rusher. So if you get that, that's a fantastic bonus. But here in the third round, let's replace Dean Lowry with some needed run defense reinforcements for Minnesota and Moro Ojomo. And then if he does keep up the pass rush production that he had in college, then that makes that defense all the better. But again, I'm focusing on the run side here at 87. Jags here at 88. Then I'm going to go Yaya Diaby. Super explosive athlete. His mock draftables hexagon is touching all ends of the corners, which is insane. 253 pounds, probably best suited to play as a DPR right away. And here at 88, I think this is a good spot to add that specialist and have him play behind Josh Allen. You could line those two up on the same side of the pass rush, defensive line. And that's two freaky athletes side by side, and I don't know what an offensive line's going to do. Or you line them up next to Trayvon Walker, and it's Trayvon Walker is kind of one-on-one, and Diaby also an insane twitched-up athlete. So no matter where you play him, and I do think he's a guy that's best suited moving across the defense, whoever you run him next to, an offensive line is just looking at two stellar athletes across from them. And, it's a league full of athletes, but these guys are kind of top-notch athletes for the top-notch athletes, which is just insane. So love him kind of being that Arden key replacement and hopefully making that pass rush that much better. And again, I think this is the best team in the division, so adding that little bit of extra juice in the pass rush department is not a bad thing whatsoever. Seattle then here at 89. I've been thinking about who could be a nice complement to Kenneth Walker, who went with power, kind of a chunk play runner, good vision, all that sort of stuff. Who's that home run threat in the offense? Devon Achane makes a lot of sense, and literal track star speed, and I think he just kind of creates a nice 1-2 punch with Kenneth Walker. And also Walker, not much in the way of a productive player in the pass game, not much of a receiver. Achane, I think, brings a little bit more there. So I think this is an opportunity to pair Walker up with a perfect skill set here. Achane's got the long speed plus a little bit more receiving prowess, and then Kenneth Walker's got just about everything else and is the lead down back. So I like that backfield a ton there in Seattle, and Pete Carroll always wants to have a committee. Dallas next up at 90. Let's go DeWayne McBride. As promised, we're going to give the Cowboys a running back, and it's not going to be in the first round. And DeWayne McBride, as productive and as highly graded a running back there was over the last couple of years, production just being the numbers, and then grades coming from PFF. And there's a lot to like. I mean, really explosive, good vision, good contact balance as well. He's kind of got that prototypical, 5'10", 200-pound frame we're looking for in running backs nowadays. Plays with a lot of power and enough speed to pick up chunks. It may not be 80-yard breakaway plays, but you already have Tony Pollard for that. So I think this creates a little bit of the power back prototype, maybe is the way to describe McBride. But he's got more juice than your slow, lumbering kind of big body back. So he's the power, and then Tony Pollard's your receiving upside and your dash, really, your kind of speed element to the offense. So I think that creates a nice 1-2 punch and gives Dallas a running back in a deep running back class without moving up to get Bijan, which, honestly, I know this is my final predictive mock. I kind of wish I still did it because I do think Jerry Jones is looking to make one more splash. Anyways, let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to give him Jalen Duncan. Basically have him be in a competition with Spencer Brown at right tackle. Hopefully the competition makes Brown better, and if it does, cool, then great, we got a better right tackle. Or if Duncan beats out Spencer Brown, then cool, great, we got a better right tackle. I just think about what could go wrong this year for Buffalo, and it's secondary injuries and it's O-line injuries. I think you can get better than Spencer Brown as is. So why not try to address that problem spot on the O-line? I think Duncan could give you that upgrade. Cincinnati then at 92. I'm going to go Tyler Steen. So we kind of noted this earlier. Kind of like Matt Bergeron, where I personally do like Steen better at guard, and I feel more confident and I feel more sure saying that versus Bergeron, where I'm a little bit flimsy. He can play tackle, play guard. I don't really care. Steen, I definitely like more at guard, so this is your immediate Jackson Carman upgrade or Cordell Volson upgrade. But this does prepare you in the event that Lyle Collins is just not good or not healthy. Steen could move over to play right tackle on a fill-in basis. So I'm drafting him with left guard as the starting spot in mind, but with the capabilities of moving over to right tackle. Plus, we drafted Darnell Washington to hopefully ease up and make that assignment that much easier for whoever is playing right tackle. So offensive line certainly a big priority here in this draft for Cincinnati. Next, the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to give them Zach Harrison, one of my favorite fits of any player to team landing spots. Give this big body, power, physical edge rusher on the other side of Brian Burns, who's like the ultimate speed, bend, finesse guy. So I think it creates a really nice 1-2 punch on paper. And also, Zach Harrison has every trait you want in a pass rusher except for bend. You iron out his consistency, and he'll be able to make up for not having a whole lot of bend because he'll be super explosive and so strong that he'll still give tackles fits. Philadelphia then at 94. Let's go Zach Pickens, a guy that I don't really talk about a whole lot, but super explosive athlete and a really productive pass rusher. Leaves a little bit to be desired in the run game, but I think going to Philadelphia, you already got that run stopper. You drafted at 13 last year and traded up to go get him in Jordan Davis. So here, Zach Pickens could just be kind of cheap Javon Hargrave replacement. And I think with this fiery, first step at the line of scrimmage, he's super explosive and get into guards quick, get into centers quick. I think he's got a lot of those traits that we talk about with Kalijah Kancey, but does it with the more prototypical D tackle build. And without having to do it at 30, you get him here at 94. So you get to address other positions earlier on in this draft, and then you get Pickens here to be that 1-2 punch with Jordan Davis. And I think this could be a really great spot for Pickens to land. Next here at 95, I'm going to give Kansas City Rashee Rice. He's not quite as big and as physical as like a Michael Wilson or one of those guys, or Cedric Tillman for that matter. But he does try to play that same game, and he does do it well. I just worry about how that will translate to the NFL level without being 6'2", 6'3", 215, 220 pounds, all that sort of stuff. But that being said, if he's that physical contested catch possession X guy that can eat up some targets, life without Travis Kelce will get a lot easier, in my opinion. But yeah, he's also just the wide receiver archetype they don't have, right? They got speed, they got yards after the catch guys, Tony, Sky Moore. They got the big play burner and Marcus Valdez-Scantling. But who's that possession X wide receiver can pick up that 3rd and 7 and keep the chains alive? You have Travis Kelce for that, but he also draws a ton of attention. Do you have a wide receiver who can do that? I think Rashee Rice could develop into that guy. Then we get to Arizona at 96. I'm going to go Izzy Abanikanda. This would be an awesome, super explosive backfield. Abanikanda plus Kyler Murray. Big plays waiting to be created rated there. 4'4", 140 is pro day, 40+ inch vertical, and Abanikanda showcases it. Not only fast, but super explosive, good vision. I don't know if he was tested. Like I don't know what he is as a receiver, to be honest with you, because Pitt just refused to use him in that department. So I don't know if there's upside there or he wasn't asked to do it because he can't do it. But because of that, I'm kind of intrigued to see what they could get out of him as a pass catcher. But I just think, as a DN trying to read option with Abanikanda and Kyler Murray, like I don't know what the right play is there because both feels like a losing proposition with how explosive both those guys would be. At 97, I'm going to do a little something different here. I'm going to give Washington Tucker Kraft. I just think about Eric Bieniemy and, obviously coming from Kansas City where they had Travis Kelce. That's a big role in the lineup card, right? Like that's a big role to fill. So do they have that guy on paper right now? There's some excitement for Cole Turner. Maybe he could be him. But Logan Thomas getting up there in age. I think it's worth drafting a guy, and Kraft laps all the way to 97. Super good athlete, and this could be a spot where he doesn't need to see the field right away. But yeah, my main concern here with Kraft is that he was just dominating lower level competition. But you look at the film and no other major concerns pop up. Now, is that because of lower level competition? How does this translate to the NFL level? All that remains to be seen. But if that wasn't the reason why he was dominating, this guy's going to become one of the best steals of the NFL draft and give Washington that potential Travis Kelce-esque type of player in that offense. All right, then to Cleveland at 98. Easy pick here for me. Siaki Ika. You pair this monster human being up with Dalvin Tomlinson, who's also a massive monster human being. And then also, I think both those guys on top of, eating space and taking up blocks and being good productive run game components, both have pretty good pass rush upside. Tomlinson's kind of an underrated pass rusher, and then Siaki Ika's got a nice spin and finesse move. So if he can use that reliably at the NFL level, then he can be a productive third down D tackle as well. So Tomlinson, Ika, 2 D tackles that could play all 3 downs. That sounds really appealing to me. And at minimum, if those guys just shore up the run game, it's worth the signing of Tomlinson and the drafting of Siaki Ika. All right, San Francisco at 99. I'm going to go Wanya Morris and take him just before the Raiders can, just in the event that they might be interested. But former 5-star recruit, has the frame, has the athleticism. Just got to get the play out of him. But it was there at one point, given that he was a 5-star recruit. I'll leave it to San Francisco to get that out of him. And also, because of his movement skills, he's a perfect scheme fit. And they need to find a replacement for Mike McGlinchey anyways. The Raiders then at pick 100. I'm going to go Ivan Pace Jr. So basically, we would have 3 different linebackers here. You have Divine Diablo, the safety turn linebacker, who, let's just say he's kind of the coverage specialist. Ivan Pace, you draft here at 100, and he would be solely your pass rush, focus, which Patrick Graham, DC, coming over from the Belichick tree, they like to blitz their linebackers. So I do think Pace is a good fit for that defense, but he would be a specialist as a pass rusher for sure. And then you got Robert Spillane, who does a little bit of everything. So I think you can kind of have this like 3-headed, kind of committee between Spillane, Pace, and Diablo, and based off whatever the, yards and down and distance and all that stuff is, and whatever the play call is, you can mix and match and have the right skill set out there, which I don't know if any of those guys are superstars, but there might be enough, specialization in Pace and Diablo to make it good enough to work with Robert Spillane. So hopefully that made sense. But I think adding that third linebacker, but with a completely different skill set, kind of creates a solid linebacker room there in Vegas. All right, back-to-back picks for San Francisco. I think they can get better on the interior, and I'm looking at Juice Scruggs to be a potential Aaron Banks replacement there at left guard. Really good on the move, solid tape at Penn State. Looked good, looked fluid at the combine during the drills. So, yeah, I think he can be a plug-and-play starter and a good fit for that zone blocking scheme. Then at 102, I'm kind of going back and forth because, Jamie Robinson's one of my guys. With that athletic testing, I just don't know if it's going to happen. So let's go Jacorian Bennett, who's like 99th percentile in 40s time and 98th percentile in broad jump and 90-something percentile in vertical. So fast and explosive. And Jacorian Bennett, throwing his film, does not get beat inside. Like, for whatever reason, this guy will just not let it happen. And he's also just, I don't even know if it's necessarily his leverage or anything, too. He's just so quick to react and be able to see that inside move coming and be able to cut off the passing lane, essentially. So, love Jacorian Bennett, and you play him there in the nickel. He's gotten better as a run defender. It may not have the size and the mass of like a Jimmy Ward, but I think it's still a willing tackler and a willing component in the run game on top of what you get with a high-end athlete, and a lot of potential there as a pass or as your coverage defender. Last pick, at long last, long video here. We're going to round it out with Olusegun Oluwatimi to the Chicago Bears. Draft and stash as the heir apparent to Cody Whitehair. That's basically why I made that pick. I think he'd be a really good fit for that zone blocking scheme. There are times where I wish he was a little bit more fluid of a mover. Sometimes it doesn't feel like you always see it, and then sometimes you see it more than others. So he's a little inconsistent there, but I do trust when I see it, I trust that it is actually there on a play-by-play basis, and that he could be that Cody Whitehair replacement in that Luke Getsy zone blocking scheme. But guys, that is going to do it for my updated 3-round NFL mock draft. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Be sure to hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new. We're going to be live for day 1 of the NFL draft. Should have said that up top, and as well as for day 2 of the NFL draft. So you've made it this far in the video. Obviously, you like the NFL draft. You're interested in where these guys might go. So join us for Thursday and Friday's day of fun with the NFL draft. But let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who went too high? Who went too low? And of course, who's your favorite team? And did you like the picks I gave your favorite squad? Whether you liked it, hated it, or fell somewhere there in between, let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. I read every comment. I react to most comments, so you will not be wasting your time whatsoever. But thank you all for watching. This is a long video, so if you made it to the end, seriously, you mean the world to me for watching this entire thing. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.